Well, South Florida has a large elderly population, of course, many with significant wealth. Unfortunately, if they find themselves incapacitated by an accident or health problems, they may wind up before the state's guardianship court.
And as the I-Team has been reporting for years, this system, which strips vulnerable adults of their rights, puts a guardian in charge of all of their healthcare and financial decisions, too often leads to theft and abuse.
So we've been reporting about how difficult it is to get out of a guardianship, but how does someone get into one in the first place? And we've got I-Team investigator Danielle here live with the answer on that. Danielle.
Well, Matt and Sam, ultimately it's a judge who decides if you need to be put into a guardianship, and that decision is supposed to be based on the recommendation of a 3-person panel. It's called an examining committee. And as you're about to see, the credentials of some of these examiners are questionable. Some of their opinions are too.
When I walk, I usually go out that way to this, and then down the street.
83-year-old Patricia Sahm appears to be in great shape.
How are you? You're so pretty. What's the name? So I've kept myself fairly sharp. I do go out and walk every day to keep sharp, physically and mentally.
She goes on walks twice a day, lives in her own home in Boca Raton, and is easy to talk to. And it's a beautiful day.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this to be obnoxious, but I've been better than a lot of people my age, a lot better.
But in the eyes of the court, Patricia is incapacitated, and she needs a guardian to manage her money and make all her decisions. Patricia is fighting that ruling and agreed to sit down with us to talk about it. Are you incapacitated?
I don't feel I am. I know who I am, where I'm going. I'm very aware of that.
You're doing a lot independently.
Yes.
Cases like Patricia's start with a petition of incapacity filed in probate court. It's often a caregiver, friend, or relative who files, claiming the individual no longer has the ability to look after themselves. The judge reviews the petition and then picks 3 people to sit on an examining committee. The committee evaluates the claim and makes a recommendation for or against guardianship.
People need to know about this system. They need to understand how it works and avoid it like the plague.
Dr. Sam Sugar is one of the nation's top experts in guardianship abuse. He's also a medical doctor who's performed evaluations of incapacity himself. He says by Florida law, there needs to be at least 1 medical doctor on this 3-person panel. The other 2 can be healthcare professionals, social workers, or just about anybody. Evaluators have to take a 4-hour course, but they aren't given a set of standards for the questions they're to ask or the length of the exam. Dr. Sugar says sometimes they spend just 15 minutes with the person they're evaluating, and family is not allowed to attend. Each circuit court maintains a list of approved examining committee members that judges typically choose from. The I-Team obtained the list for Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast, and we found just 16 names. While many were psychologists or psychiatrists, others had no background in mental health at all, like an OBGYN from Miami and a urologist in Wellington. Do you think that a gynecologist or a urologist, for example, are qualified to be determining somebody's capacity?
Well, the answer to that is of course not. However, I'm not the decider.
According to court filings, that urologist is Dr. Stanley Bloom. 86 years old, Dr. Bloom is not licensed to practice in Florida, but he was one of the evaluators for Patricia Sahm. According to his report, he never met her in person, only Zoom. He suggested Patricia had dementia due to short and long-term memory loss. Bloom said Patricia failed his math questions. She told us she's always been bad with numbers. Bloom said she didn't know the name of the president. She told us she knew Trump had just won. At the end of his evaluation, Bloom checked every box, recommending a full guardianship, the loss of her rights to make decisions about her life, her medical care, and her money, everything turned over to a stranger. Hi, this is Danielle DaRos from CBS 12 News, calling you on a recorded line. I called Dr. Bloom to ask about his work on these examining committees, what led him to recommend Patricia lose her ability to make decisions. He wasn't interested. I'm trying to do research on examining committees for guardianships.
Sorry, I'm not interested in
you serve on
involved in this at all, so I'm sorry.
You serve on examining committees.
I wish you good luck, but I'm not interested in being interviewed. So thank you for calling.
Well, could you just explain how you're...
I will not.
Why is that?
Goodbye.
Of the 3 members on that panel, Dr. Bloom's assessment, a urologist, remember, was apparently decisive. A psychologist on the panel found Patricia had mild cognitive impairment. The 3rd panelist recommended the least restrictive options for her. The judge put her into a full guardianship until Patricia's lawyer objected. Then Dr. Sugar was asked to meet with her and perform his own exam. He wrote to the judge that Patricia's memory loss was age appropriate and does not rise to the level that requires the court to impose the most restrictive solution.
Because remember, we're talking about someone's life. You take away someone's rights, they're dead in the law.
All right, back here live with Danielle. All right, Danielle, other than Patricia, are there other cases where these capacity evaluations have been called into question?
Yeah, and over the years, I've done many interviews with former wards of the state, and it's very interesting when we look back at some of these stories. So I want to call back one of them, Michael McCray. He was a teenager living with autism on the Treasure Coast when he was put into a guardianship, and he lost all of his rights. He eventually found a lawyer to fight for his freedom. Now, years later, he has his own job. He lives on his own. He goes to Tallahassee and lobbies lawmakers to change disability rights. Also this woman, Jan Garwood, she lives in the Orlando area. Years ago, she was put into a guardianship, sent off to a memory care facility to live. She also got a lawyer. She got a new incapacity examination. Then the court reversed its decision. Clearly, she is not incapacitated. When you meet with these people, you just shake your head. How could they wind up in this situation?
Now, we heard Dr. Sugar then say that the most restricted solution wasn't necessary for Patricia. What happens next in her case?
So this is still a very active case. It is ongoing. It is contentious. And so coming up, I believe it's early December, she has another hearing, and they'll continue to fight. Her lawyers continue to fight this finding of incapacity, argue to the judge for perhaps another chance at this, and see if they can stop a guardianship from going forward. So we'll have to stay on top of it, let you know what happens. What's interesting, Matt and Sam, is that in a lot of these cases, this person whose rights are on the line, they may never show up to court. The judge may never lay eyes on them, may never hear from them. It's hard to believe that that's how this works.
Well, it was a petition sent by one person, a 15-minute, interview, and this winds up with a person losing all their rights. Unbelievable, Danielle. Thank you very much.
All right, we've got more ARC Florida coming up after this. Florida's deeply flawed guardianship system labeling some fully capable seniors as incapacitated. Coming up, our I-team is looking into one woman's fight against court orders and who exactly the people are that have put her in this frustrating position. And some much needed wet weather hitting the East Coast. Welcome back to CBS 12 News this morning. This morning, the I-team has the story of one woman's fight for freedom and the surprising process that puts people like her into court-appointed guardianships. Patricia Sahm is in her 80s and still walks daily, lives in her home in Boca Raton, and does a lot independently. When you meet her, you'll be surprised to learn in the eyes of the court she is incapacitated and needs a guardian to control her life. As Patricia fights that ruling, she agreed to sit down with us as we investigate the people who made this decision.
Are you incapacitated?
I don't feel I am. I know who I am, where I'm going. I'm very aware of that.
You're doing a lot independently.
Yes.
In guardianship court, there are 3-person panels that evaluate people like Patricia, then decide who is incapacitated and loses their rights and freedoms. Coming up on ARC Florida at 9 a.m., I-team investigator Danielle DaRos will tell you who the deciders are and the surprising qualifications they lack.
And now to the stormy weather impacting